Well, I think we're live now. I think I see a few folks coming in. Oh, hey, Elizabeth. It's nice to see you. Come on in. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see y'all coming to here. I think it's fair to say we're going to geek out today. What would you say, Laura? There's a lot of stuff about marketing that is not fun, like when you're trying to grow a newsletter, but like these are such your first impressions on Substack can be wildly interpreted in so many different ways of like what the best thing is to do. And so I think it'll be really fun next hour for you and me to just walk through like just some ways to think about it. So Laura Robinson, welcome to today's live stream. I wanted to introduce my community to you because you've been a huge help to me in the last couple of months and just helping me think through a lot of stuff in my business. And it says my internet's unstable. Well, fingers crossed. Um, and I just really loved how your brain works. So we are both neurodivergent, which I think also helps us kind of connect in like that really broad, expansive way. And so I wanted people to have the chance to hear from you around their Substack first impressions. And if y'all haven't heard me talk about first impressions before, I'll just share really quickly that like the Substack architecture has remained really, really stable around these 5 spaces. So it's your personal bio, your publication description, your homepage, your about page, and your welcome email. And these things have not changed. I've been here for over 3.5 years. How people move through the discoverability network on Substack is actually very stable. And so these 5 places are where I talk about how you make your first impression, the right impression, so that your readers find you. There's lots of ways to interpret. I think that's the magic and the madness of marketing, right, Laura? Is that like how you bring yourself into these really high impact spaces is different for each person. And so I'm hopeful today that we can give y'all some just some ways to think creatively about your first impressions, but also to make them like work. Like we want readers to sign up for our newsletters, and there are definitely ways that you can create barriers for your readers. So, thank you for being here. It's nice to see everybody logging in. Um, could you tell folks just a little about what you do? Like I've in the replay, I'll be sharing links to some of the tools that have really helped me that you've made. But I'd love for you to just tell folks like why are we interested in this? Like what makes these fun and fun to you? So what do you do?
Okay, well, for me, like all kinds of marketing is fun to me. Like there's not a bit that isn't fun. I think 'cause I've always really been interested in how our brains work and human behavior and why we make the decisions we do and how we can influence those decisions. And so it's always been marketing for me. Like even when I was at school, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I've had this business for 10 years. And before that, I was like freelance, like content writing, setting up websites, the usual kind of freelance gigs that people do.
Yeah.
And then I set up a copywriting business. I'd say like a good chunk of my work is sales pages. But I really love taking people through that journey of like getting to know someone from scratch, like a complete stranger coming in, getting to know you, and then understanding how you can help them, and then taking them through that sales process until they're ready to see the sales page and buy something. So I've done like 10 years of writing sales pages for other people, and then in the last few years, I've worked in a more like mentoring capacity of helping other people think about the buyer's journey that they're putting in front of their people and how to make that smoother, easier,
Yeah.
more comfortable, like so that it feels good for both of you, for the customer and for you, and that you can do it in a way that like it's not sleazy, pushy selling. It just feels like natural and conversational and like a genuine connection that you have with people.
Yeah, and I say that's what I really love about like your approach is, and I think a lot of people in my community relate to this sense of like, well, I want people to sign up, but I don't want to do it in an icky kind of way. Like I want to do it in an authentic way. And there's actually a lot about sales psychology that completely like it 100% influences how people decide whether or not they subscribe or upgrade to your founding tier. So just love having your brain online for this today. It's gonna be really fun. And I will link to the sales. Yeah, she has a really great tool for like sales page architecture that I have used over and over again, and it has really helped me as well. So I'll link to that so y'all can see it. So let's dive into the first impressions. And I want to start by just saying, like, sharing just a tiny bit about like what I've observed over the last 3.5 years inside Substack, because you're going to find lots of different kinds of bios, lots of different kinds of publication descriptions, and lots of competing advice about what makes one of those things good. And I prefer to not say like this is the one way to do them, but I do like to point out there are things that absolutely get in the way of what makes a good bio, what makes a good publication description. And I am going to reference a friend of mine that I interviewed. Her name is Nancy Reddy. And Nancy Reddy used to write poetry. Like that was her jam, was poetry. And when she shifted to writing nonfiction, she got one of the best pieces of feedback from her copy editor. And the copy editor said, stop ending things with jazz hands. Stop expecting your audience to figure out what they're supposed to do next. Whereas poetry is this wide open field where we walk into the mystery of it. Nonfiction is not like that. That's not what it's for. You have to bring conclusion and and um and a clarity to what your readers are experiencing. And so I would say for me, that's like the number one barrier that I see in all these first impressions is that they're all very jazz handsy, like, okay, figure it out now. And that's the opposite of what marketing is here to do. Good marketing and good first impressions help them find their way into the next step. And so with that said, I know you and I chatted a little bit offline about the first 5 to 10 seconds, like that sort of like cascade of like someone encountering you, the process of what they're going through. And I was wondering, Laura, if you could tell us a little bit about like the psychology of someone in those first 5 seconds versus the next 10 seconds. Because inside Substack, people are moving through those first impressions really quickly. Um, and I really love the way you described it. So I wonder if you could share with folks kind of what we were talking about, um, what that looks like, the first 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
I
Yeah.
will, but first of all, I've got to say, like, we didn't talk about this. Like what you just said, we did not. I didn't know that you were going to say that, and I had written myself some notes to remind me of like these are the things I definitely want to get across. And one of the things I had written down is that giving direction is as important as creating connection. Because
Yes.
it's like it's just all you need to do is just make it really clear. If you take away all the barriers to someone doing the thing you want them to do and point them in a direction, conversion increases massively, like without having to have any of these amazing persuasion skills or techniques or like copywriting trickery. You just need to have a clear idea of what is the direction I want someone to move in. Okay, well, how can I make that obvious to them? And that is like 80% of the work done. And we did not rehearse that. You were no, you were planning on saying that.
it I thought of Nancy this morning, and I'll tag her in the replay. And I was just like, yeah, it's jazz hands in a lot of places of like, well, I'll just let you figure it out. And readers are busy. They have a lot to do. And I love that. Um, so do you want to like kind of just pull apart a little bit of like what those first, I think one of the challenges for a lot of folks is they think they have lots of time to
You don't.
persuade their readers. And so yeah, I would love to just like hand the mic over to you really brief for a little bit here and just hear like how you think through those first 5, 10, 15 seconds of first impressions.
Okay, so your first impressions on your Substack is very similar to anything like creating the top line, headline for a blog post, subject line for an email. All you're trying to do is in the first 5 seconds, even less than that, the only thought in the reader's head that they're not aware that they're having is this worth any more of my time, energy, or headspace? That's the only decision they're making. They're not deciding if they're going to buy from you. They're not deciding if they're going to read anything that you've got. They're just wondering if they're going to stick around long enough to make the next decision. And after that first 5 seconds where they've gone, okay, like I'm in, I'm going to move up and down the page a little bit. Then they're deciding whether to give you another 10 seconds. And then the trust builds and how much investment they're willing to give you increases slowly until they get to the point where like, okay, now I'm going to click on this thing and read this thing. And then you've like sucked them into your world and you've got much more control over being able to keep them engaged. But before that moment when they're just like looking at your homepage or whatever page it is they've landed on, they're just, their eyes are just flitting all over the place, like scanning for threats because that's what we're wired for, looking around like foraging. Is there anything here for me? Is any of this relevant? Do I need to pay attention to any of this? You have a really small amount of time to hook them in. And it can be something really small. It can be the cover photo you used. It could be that you've put an emoji in a headline. It can be like the structure of your bio, not even necessarily the words in it, but the way you've broken it up and the spacing and that you've included emojis, it's just enough to get them to pay attention for the next 5 seconds. And then you start to have a bit more control over calling in their attention and directing the journey. But to begin with, you just have to get them to stay on the page for the first 5 seconds.
Yeah. I think I think something that draws people to Substack is that there is this sense of like a slower sort of reading experience. And I do think that that has borne out that like people do invest in long form reading, but their decision making process is not long form. It is fast. And so I think that's important to just reiterate for folks when they are writing their first impressions that like these still answer to the fast-paced nature of what everybody is living through. Um, so so I love that. I love just thinking through that um, because we don't want to be vague. We want to be as specific as possible. So let's jump into um, the personal bio. So inside Substack, one of the things that I think works really well is that your name is always next to your publication name. And I think there's a way to turn it off, but I think it is the default that you have name and your publication. And when you hover over it, your bio and your publication description show up together. And that is consistent across like your comments. Like you can see right away, here's this person and here's what they're writing about. And so I love to see I want to talk a little bit about like why writer, dreamer, coffee lover likely isn't going to we want to be more specific and like what can we dig into to be more specific about who we are, like what actually would work in a personal bio. And like you smiled when I said writer, dreamer, coffee lover. So I have a hunch that you have some things to chime in on. Let's talk about why being vague doesn't work and what does it sound like to not be vague.
Well, I mean, hands up who could put writer, dreamer, coffee, like that's me. I'm a writer, dreamer, and coffee lover, but that would not be my bio. And there's, a good percentage of people that would would stop right up in the air, like, because that could be describing them. So your bio needs to be like your bio, but nobody else, nobody could copy and paste your bio and put it under their name and it still be true. That's your bio needs to be you.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So if we I think one of the interesting things is like obviously like how do we decide what we want to identify about ourselves in this bio, like what actually matters, because the bio is a really substantial point of social proof around like why do you get to write about this thing. And so I think a lot about the interplay between the fact that these readers are going to see my bio and my publication description. So helpful tip, make sure they're not repeating themselves, like make sure that they are distinctive from one another. But for me, the bio experience I'm looking for is like, do I resonate with who you are? Can I find enough specificity to go, oh, I'm curious about what they're doing because I have likely seen them in context with their writing already inside Substack. And I think that's part of like what has made Substack really successful is that you're seeing someone in the context of depth and not just a flash in the pan. So I love that. So yeah, so inside and I'm wondering about this because I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, Laura, because I talk a lot about like the reader why, like, and we talk about like, what's in it with me. I think reader why is a little less like kitschy, but the reality is that the reader's trying to find out why should I keep reading and um, how much do you think someone should promise inside their newsletter? How much is it about the experience versus the social proof that I should get to write about it? Do you have any thoughts there?
Um, Like I do. I think social proof is important to the extent that I want to be able to trust that the words that I'm reading from you come from a place of credibility and you've got some kind of like it's either your lived experience or your training or there's a reason why you're writing about what you're writing about. But credibility is a very difficult thing to balance because you always need to offset it with relatability. Because otherwise, what happens is you end like as soon as you're writing, if you've chosen to write about a subject or you're passionate about something, you have already declared to the readers like I know this thing, this is my thing. Look at me, I'm about this thing. And so you're now up here on the. Oh, I'm not used to doing this on a phone. Like move my hand movements down.
Okay.
You're now like up on a bit of a pedestal. So they're looking up and like, oh yeah, you know about this thing that I want to know about or I'm interested in, but you're a tiny bit above them because they're reading about it and you're writing about it. And you want that, like you want a little bit of credibility so they trust you. But the problem is if you're leaning too hard into the credibility, you gradually just get further and further and further away from them so that they don't see you as a person. They can't connect with you. You're not relatable. So you need to have this balance between like the credibility, like the reason why you're the person that they should listen to around this theme, but also you are still a person, like a relatable human person, and they're going to be able to understand the words because you're not like hitting them with a bunch of jargon. You live in the same world as them, and you're going to welcome them into like your little pocket of that world. But there isn't like this gap or this like a gap where you're way above them up on this pedestal.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because I'm thinking about how there are people who, like, I'm thinking of, like, journalists who have, like, 20 years covering a certain beat, like,
Mhm.
their credibility is actually what they should lead with, that, like, "I've covered this forever like nobody else," but it's very different if you are an individual, like an independent writer or an independent creator, because that relatability I'm really interested in that sort of spectrum of, like, relatability to credibility, and I think it only in my experience, as someone who has rewritten their bio and their publication description, as it has evolved, like, I recognize that there are seasons where one weighs out the other, and I just kind of play with it and see how people come in. So I'm wondering if you were, um, when does I guess here's my question. I guess, is there a point where social proof isn't important? That's a good question. The
Yeah,
social
I
proof
think
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that as you were talking, I was thinking, but when you said about those journalists that write about things, but I might not want to listen to a journalist with 20 years experience now. I might just want to listen to another person who's very similar to me, who's lived the same experience as I have and get that completely different take. Or I might want to listen to two journalists that talk about this thing and three other people who are writing from the perspective of lived experience. So I guess that's not taking away social proof or credibility. It's like a different type of it. But I think often people can undermine their own credibility or they miss like they see the credibility that other people publicize and say like this is the reason why I can write about this thing, and then they look at their reasons and think maybe that's not good enough. And my perspective is if you've got a reason, it's good enough, and someone will like just share what your reason is. The reason is good enough. Share it, and then the right people will read that and go, okay, that's someone's perspective that I want to read.
Yeah. No, I really like that. As you were talking, I was thinking about how, these first impressions, like, they are important, but I don't ever want somebody to get so hung up on them being perfect that they don't start writing. Because ultimately, these are just your first impressions. And what we want is we want these first impressions to then echo inside the writing that they find. Because the writing is where they stay, as you said earlier. So, yeah, I just want to pause and give folks like permission to keep evolving. In fact, I was just chatting with one of my mentors yesterday, and she was like, "If your mission statement changes, that means that you're changing too. That's a
Mm.
good thing. It's a good thing to evolve." Um, so yeah, so I think vagueness is probably the one thing I would say. Like, try not to be vague, and also it's okay to be playful. Like, I've had playful bios for a little bit. I don't know if they made a difference or not, but it was helpful for me to actually feel myself be playful in a space where I tend to just veer off into like deep dives and seriousness sometimes. And I was thinking about some advice you actually gave me because I wonder if we can unpack this a little bit because I think there's a lot of people in my audience who are neurospicy and picking the pressure to niche down and be specific can actually be overwhelming. And so I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about how just you had some really good insights around how to pick the thing to focus on in how you present yourself. And you and I had asked you, I was like, well, a lot of people know me for my work in data, but that's just one really small part of who I am. And I don't want it to seem like that's my niche because it's not my lived experience that I'm just thinking about data all the time. And you had a lot of, I want to open up your brain for a second there, if you can just keep that, because I think folks get stuck, um, like they have to have a niche in order to draw people in, and I'm wondering, some of your advice really helped me relax with that. Do you remember the moment we chatted about that?
I mean, my advice in this area is usually like have fun with it and experiment and write about the things that you want to write about and then pay attention to not just what you get back from other people, but how you feel like as you're giving it out. Like it's a two-way thing. And then you'll just get a feel for, okay, well, I loved the reaction when I wrote about this, and I'm going to do more of it. And um, I did not, I got a reaction from this thing, but I didn't enjoy the process of writing it. So put it in the bin. I'm not doing that anymore. There's a necessary phase of discovery. And I think, as you said, like as you evolve, you start to feel like you might have had an itch, and you just feel like the walls are like, or suddenly it just feels like this is not me anymore, and I'm ready to like push out of it. For example, I mean, this wasn't on Substack, but my business was very much about copywriting for sales pages. Like that was what I was known for, and I got hired to speak about that and deliver training sessions about it, and it was my thing. Like I did sales pages, and almost more specifically, sales pages for membership. So it was really super, super focused. And I got invited to speak at an in-person event. And there was no, they said you can talk about whatever you want. But I think in the back of their mind, they assumed I was going to talk about sales pages because that's what I was all about.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot stand on stage. I cannot talk about sales pages anymore. This cannot be the rest of my life. Like it was really useful to build an identity quite quickly and build up a client base quite quickly, but this is not me forever. And it just felt like a really low risk, and that sounds weird that it's a low risk opportunity to try something out, but I knew if I stood on that stage in front of, I don't know, there was probably not even 100 people in the room, but I would get the feedback straight away of, do I enjoy talking about this, and what happens to the people in front of me, like how are they responding to it? And so I used it as an opportunity to talk about how I'd built a business around slightly chaotic home life, like being neurodivergent, growing up having neurodivergent kids that I homeschooled, um and I hadn't really I'd mentioned it on social media a bit, it'd been in some of my emails, and I tested it. So I'd had some kind of reaction. So I knew it wasn't, something that people were going to be absolutely repelled by. And also they knew what the talk was about. So if they'd chosen to be in the room, they knew roughly what I was going to talk about. And the reaction was fantastic. And I loved it. I hated speaking on stage. There's no way I'm ever doing that again. But the conversations that I had with people afterwards and the emails I was like, this is it. Like I'm ready. And so I was the sales page person, but then started on this, like having a comfy business newsletter is the name of my newsletter. Um, so I didn't have a niche and stick with it. And that's all I've ever known. I just had one and then went, oh, I feel like I'm wrapped in this thing and I don't want to wear it all the time. I need to try something else. But equally, if I'd done that talk and then felt like, oh, I feel really exposed, I wish I hadn't shared that about myself and nobody seemed to get it, I would have just found something else to talk about and see how people reacted to that. I don't know if that answered your question, but it was like a very real experience for me that I'm not really into, like, your niche is not, I know it feels like it's such a big deal, but it's really not. And also people don't remember. I was the sales page person for years and years. And it does, and I've been about the Comfy Business newsletter equally for like 4 or 5 years. And there'll be people that still see me as a sales page person. It's like they still haven't caught up. And there's other people that have never known me as a different version. So you don't actually have that much influence over how people see you. They'll like pick up on one idea and it's kind of stuck in their head. So to me, like you might as well suit yourself, experiment, play around with it, see what you enjoy, and just know that it's like not that big a deal because you're not wedded to it forever.
Yeah, I think that was the gist of what
So that
you
makes- yeah.
encouraged me around, was that like if someone sees you as the data queen, they're going to see you as a data queen, and that like they will uncover what they want to uncover about you in their journey with your newsletter. And I just felt like that was such a really wonderful point of permission. And I wanted to apply that like you have that same permission inside your first impressions here, that like what you're doing now, what matters is, and we talked about this, like, it's like continuity of spirit. Like, are they meeting the same person that they encounter out in the wilds of this, network of Substack? Are they meeting that same person on your homepage and your about page and your welcome email? And I'm mindful of the time, because you have some very good skills around about pages. And I want to just touch, we're going to get to that next, but I want to just touch briefly because your homepage is one of those first impressions, and we literally cannot unpack the depth to which you can customize a homepage. But I want to just encourage folks that like your homepage should have something relevant, something fresh, and variety. Like people need to get a taste, and then they're going to dive in around what they want. And the only thing I can probably pull out of my cap this morning for your homepage without seeing it in front of me is that um there's a really fun experiment that I've done before where I pin intentionally on my homepage and I watch the stats to see like when people, because there's no way for me to know what my homepage is doing on Substack. I need to work on that in their data. But I can create And I encourage folks to create like basically an experiment of pinned posts at the top so that you can see when they get certain kinds of traffic. So I don't know if you have any ideas on the homepage that you want to share, because I know we're going to deep dive into about pages next.
I mean, you've got a start here post on your homepage, haven't you?
I do. I have taken it off and on, and I find no dip in the data when I shift from like a hero post start here versus like um centering a post that's gotten a lot of comments and feedback on it. So I play with it. That's something that I play with for sure.
But do you always have a start here option on the homepage? You just move around where it is, or sometimes you don't even have one that's called start here?
Sometimes I don't have a start here. Sometimes I actually pin the things that are inside the start here.
Okay.
I play with it a lot. I play with it. But yeah, so I've I've never found one way that is just the way. And so I just, because I made
Okay.
that experiment. Yeah,
That,
what do you
I
think?
mean, starting a post would have been one of the first things that I'd recommend because, like I said at the beginning, people need direction almost more than they need connection because they just like they need to know like where should I focus? I'm looking around. I don't know if this is still true, but you just reminded me that historically the top right would be like that was your prime real estate. So you would have
Yeah.
like eyes just drift up there. I think maybe because the X is in that direction and we still just, but I don't know if that's out of date advice now.
Let me look
Because
here.
you want to get so you just told us you're not all about the data, and I mentioned something. You're like, I'm just going to get some data on that immediately.
I know, I know. It's because I think I'm very neurodivergent in that like I don't want to be perceived as one thing. I'd like the internet is exposing still, to me. So but I am more than just the data. But I do like data and I like experiments and I like to play with these things. I'm trying to get to someone's homepage to see if their top right has the subscribe button still. Yeah, top right
I think, yeah, yes,
is the default. Yeah, you can't change that on Substack. So yeah,
yeah,
top
okay.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the idea of a start here page. You have very little control over what people are going to do when they arrive anywhere, like on a website or Substack or anything at all. So having something that says start here is your best chance of directing their journey. But I have no idea how, like how compliant people will be, like what percentage of people will go there. I think what's really important is so you said you sometimes you pin the posts that are in like those are the things that link from start here. And probably what works about that is you have identified what are the easiest first stepping stones for someone to tread on to come deeper into my world.
Yeah.
And some of your content will be better for that than others. Like there'll be some pieces of content that you have that is amazing, but is really only well suited to people that have read at least two or three other things from you so that they're happy to go, because it's really long and in depth. And so they've already got that trust. So they're willing to go deeper with you. They're already a bit familiar with the terms that you use and your style. So not all like even pinning the popular stuff isn't necessarily the right move because what's popular is not the same as what makes a really good like first rung of the ladder. If someone is just brand new to your world, what is the thing that's going to help them get like sucked in further and go, yes, I want more of that. And the sort of opposite of that is you run this risk of if it feels like too cliquey or too like they arrive and they're brand new and they read something and they feel like it's part of a club that they don't belong to yet.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, that wasn't for me. And they might not feel like joining up to become, to like muscle their way in and get to be part of that club. So I think having a really good awareness of what pieces of content are a great first step to people, what makes a great first rung of the ladder, and then pinning that to your homepage is a really good starting point.
Yeah, I really like that. And I want to add that there should not be all paid posts at the top, because if people
Yeah.
start clicking and they start reaching barrier after barrier, that's just a bad and frustrating
Yeah.
reader experience. So just a quick note there that like this should be a place where they get to experience what they're missing out on. And then once you pull them into sort of like your ecosystem, they'll get lots of chances to be reminded that you would love for them to upgrade.
I had a question about that because I was having a
Yeah.
look around yesterday evening while I was preparing for this.
Yeah.
Is there like something because I'm on Substack a bit, but not a huge amount. Is it obvious? Like when you look at a headline or something, is it obvious if something's a paid post or is a free one?
So On the home page, it's this tiny little lock button, like little
Okay.
tiny gray lock button. If you're in the app, there'll be like a purple paid, so it's much easier to see, like, if you land there, like, paid, 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 paid. Um, so yeah, so it's not desktop, they definitely blend it in more.
Because I was wondering about like what if you use, especially just for the post that you're going to put on the homepage, like some kind of emoji, or literally just said like free or unlocked, like an open padlock, unlocked, and then the headline, so that it was easy for someone who is brand new to see it. But you just mentioned like not being frustrated, and like again, like I can't emphasize how important this is, because when they're going to click, they're going to get like an anticipatory reward, so that like the dopamine is coming because I'm going to
Yes.
get my content.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then they open the page and they get so far, and they hit that barrier. And to us, that, like, when you're familiar with the platform, or like we're familiar with that experience, that maybe not as frustrating. But someone who's a bit newer, that is a very real they will physically feel that barrier in their body, because they then don't get the dopamine hit that they were expecting. And it is a brave soul that continues to click around and risk feeling that way again, and then potentially a third time. Like, is not fun for them to do that. So if you have any way of making it super obvious to someone that this is like an unlocked or free or like accessible piece of content, I think that is a good place to start as well.
Yeah. No, I love that. I might play around with emojis in some of the headlines. I really like that. Um, boy, we could go down rabbit trail just on that. But next conversation, my friend. Um, okay, so we've gone through. We talked about your bio, your publication description, your homepage. Let's talk about pages, because about pages to me are like the unwritten canvas, and that there's so much potential inside your about page. And historically, what I was trying to create, I created a resource for my paid subscribers where I wanted it to think in modules of like what's important to have on a page, but to like play. Like, this is a place to play in a space that is very standardized. There's a lot of templates that people can use for their about page on Substack. And so when you and I were chatting, and you told me that you could, talk on and on about pages, I knew you would have something to just help us step out of the ordinary. So tell us about how you feel about pages, um, and what makes them effective.
Okay, well, I mean, about pages, I usually talk about them in the context of a website, but I'm pretty certain that a lot of the things will apply for Substack.
I think
The
so.
reason that I'm so like enthusiastic about pages is, to me, they're like they're the soul. They're the soul of your business. They're the soul of your writing. They're like an anchor, because it's not like, yes, you're about pages for other people, but your about page is for you as well. It like that is an anchor of your voice, of the things that you care about. Um, if I was going to prescribe a structure, it would look something like, what is this? Why does it exist? More detail about why you're the person that created this thing. And then towards the end, like a bit of information about the difference between free and paid, or like ways that can go deeper into your world. um, and written in like the best that you can imagine, like the best writing voice you can possibly bring yourself to do, not just because of the impression that it makes on the reader, but then it's an anchor for you to come back to over and over again, because we're always like, we'll drift and we forget why we're doing this, and we forget what's important, and we'll see like, okay, well, if I do this kind of thing, then that seems to be more popular and gets more attention, and it's natural that we will drift from what our original intention was. But to me, that about page is like an anchor that brings you back to your purpose, but your voice, and can get you like re-energized just by reading it. So for me, your about page is as much for you as it is for the reader.
Yeah. No, I really love that. And one of the things that I think why you can also get sucked into overthinking your about page is the fact that, like, you can make this as immersive or high level as you want to, like, depending on who your audience is, like knowing what your audience needs to feel like their time is respected. The thing that that I think I see a lot in the Substack space, and I'd love for you to talk about this, is that we just assume they already care. We already assume, and we turn it into like a list of ingredients, and then the ingredients are really vague. So I think we're going back to like jazz hands figure it out, and it's like, no, how do we make that as specific as possible to the reader? So I had a question, and I think my main thing was like, what do you think happens inside a reader's mind when they just read a list of ingredients, Laura?
Like just on the about page where it's just
Yeah,
like,
like
here's what you can find on my newsletter, or here's the kind
yeah,
of things that
yeah.
you think, and it doesn't. I think the thing that frustrates me is it actually doesn't take that much to make that better. Because if you just took that list of ingredients and went one step further as to like why, like why is that the list of ingredients? Why do you care about each thing on the ingredient, like, on the ingredient list? What's the reader going to get out of it? It or like, how do you feel about, like, I'm excited about writing about this thing, except exciting is a bit bland. So like just dig a little deeper. It's like it's fine if your first draft is just a list of ingredients. Like that's the first draft.
Yeah.
Now put the work in and bring in like some emotion, some enthusiasm, some specificity, some like relatability. What was the word I was looking for? So that the reader can see themselves in the list that you're writing and the reason like why they would care about it. Your about page is a tricky thing actually, because as you were talking, I was thinking, you said like, oh, being immersive and like it's almost like a bit self-indulgent, I think sometimes an about page can be. But
Yeah.
the tricky thing is it kind of does need to be both of those things at the same time, because some of the people that click on your about page are ready to be immersed. Like they've looked around, they like what they've seen, and they're like, give me more. Like, I want more of you. I want to know everything about you. Like, really tell me about your life because I love what I've seen so far. And they're ready to be immersed in your world. But for a good proportion of the rest of them, they've just looked around like a panic rabbit looking at the homepage and not like, you're like, I don't know what to click. I'm going to click on about because that's usually a safe button for me to click on. And then you're going to have to help me once I get to the about page, understand what all of this is and if it's relevant to me. And so it's weird because you've kind of got these two distinct audiences. The ones that are already like, yep, I'm bought in. I want to throw myself into your world. Show me how to do that. And then this other crew who are just like, no, have no clue what you're about and really
Woo
clicking
me a
me.
little more. Yeah.
Yeah. And clicking the about page is literally like their last ditch effort to try and make sense of what it is that they've just seen and decide if they're going to stick around. So just even being aware that you're catering to those two different audiences, I think can be helpful.
Yeah. No, I love that. That some people want to take action right away and some people they need a little more time. So I love that. And the so let's the final thing in the actually my brain is jumping back to the about page architecture. So it is safe to assume inside the Substack architecture that your about page is a last ditch effort. Just because
Okay.
of the way that people discover you inside notes or inside other people's comments, that the about page could, and we don't have data for this. I keep saying I'm not a data queen, but like we don't have proof yet that like the about page is potentially the ripcord people pull, but we
Mm.
can reasonably assume that the about page actually carries quite a bit of weight in how they decide whether or not to subscribe or not. So no pressure, but just know it's actually a great place to experiment because people are likely on their in or out sort of
Mhm.
button. So the final place inside the first impressions that I kind of talk about within my community, anyways, is your welcome email, and I think we could talk for hours about welcome emails because the psychology of the person who's showing up and reading the welcome email is way more specific. Like something
Mhm.
about those first impressions made sense to them and they opted in. And I would I would love to hear just your thoughts on like what makes a good welcome email. I love to experiment with welcome emails. I change mine up every couple of months because I just want to try a different voice and try a different way to get people to engage. But like what are your what are your thoughts on the welcome email that what makes it actually effective? Like what's its job?
First of all, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly, sometimes people have subscribed, like they've looked at your pen, they're like they've pressed subscribe, so they've like really consciously subscribed to your newsletter.
Yeah.
Does Substack have that structure where it will recommend other people and you can just click to subscribe to other newsletters and you haven't really seen anything? You've just seen like the name and one sentence and you're clicking and you're subscribing to them, like recommended newsletters.
So I think they're phasing that out.
Okay,
They
good.
did.
Because I
They
have thought.
they yeah, they did. They did. That used to be a big part of the onboarding process. I believe they're phasing that out. I think that was part of the big shift that everybody saw in their drop in numbers is that there
Okay.
wasn't this automatic way to subscribe to a bunch of other newsletters you don't know about. So what were you thinking there?
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great because I have so many thoughts about that system.
It was so easy to subscribe to like 7 other newsletters at the
yeah.
same time, and I have a hunch that
And then you just can't,
wrong
like, you're just
system.
looking at the emails and like, I don't remember which one was which newsletter, and I'm definitely not going to read all 7, so I just delete them. And yeah, like it's just, I'm not a fan of that system. And so if you've seen a drop off in subscribers, you're probably not losing like the best quality subscribers you ever had.
No.
So that makes it a lot easier as well, because if the welcome email was trying to perform 2 jobs, that was kind of the problem in the earlier days when I was working with people with their Substack, is that the welcome email was for people who had very intentionally subscribed, and then also the ones that had just like tagged you on the list of 5 other people. And again, like you're trying to do 2 jobs with one piece of communication, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
But so now it's more for people who like they've looked and they're like, yes, you're for me.
Yeah.
I suppose my first thing I'd say is probably don't overestimate the level of commitment they have to you at that point, because really, like what they've done is gone, I I like what I see here, and I don't really want to forget that it exists. Like
Yeah.
that's about as far as they've got. Like they
I
don't.
don't wanna lose track of it.
I
Yeah.
don't want to, like, I just want to know that you're still in my life, and I know how to get back to you. That's basically, if I want to know how to get back to you, should I feel like it. And I actually quite like the idea of you showing up in my inbox so that I don't have to remember to come back to you. You're going to knock on my door and go, hi, I still exist. Do you remember me? You quite liked my like entertainment. So that is um, so that's the level of commitment that you've got, is permission to go in front of them a few more times because they don't want to forget that you exist.
Yeah.
Um, and then they have kind of forgotten about you. Like, this is brutal. They probably are not then leaping immediately to their inbox to read the welcome email that you've just sent them. So then there's going to be some lag of time where they have a whole other life, where they've seen a lot of other emails and a lot of other websites and a lot of other stuff has happened to them. And then one day they go back to their inbox, and if you have a subject line that says hi, welcome, something like that,
Yeah.
they already don't remember. So whatever is the subject line, ideally, is, I don't know how it formats, but um even like having the newsletter name is helpful, but even that is not necessarily enough to remind them that you existed. So even like if you have visual references like, hi, I'm newsletter, and the first line could be, hi, remember me, I'm the author of this newsletter, the one with the short bright red hair, or like something that they would be able to connect the experience of having been on your Substack at some point and gone, yes, I like you, I want you in my inbox. You want to try and um make that connection again. Do you know, like the moment of connection you had where they press subscribe, your welcome email is trying to recreate that in their inbox to take them back to that feeling and that moment in time where they're like, yes, permission, subscribe, I want more of you. And then take them on to the next stage of the journey. Because you're always like, for every stage of sales or marketing, you're always trying to remember, like, where were they? Where did I leave them in their journey? Where are they at right now? Okay, I need to pick them up right where they were and then take them another small step. And then that's how you kind of build that continuity, and you make it really easy for them to go with you. So that was me getting super passionate about welcome sequence emails.
Well, they matter, and as you were talking, I realized that that I probably need to think through I'm gonna need to do an addendum to my first impressions, because, Substack actually announced in the best sellers, chat basically, or the newsletter, that they're now in beta testing for nurturing sequences. So one of the biggest problems that folks have run into on Substack is that they've only ever had a welcome email. There's
Mhm.
been no way to like do a drip. And if you have been publishing for a long time, you likely have an archive that can make the first impression for you automatically. And so I want to just note that um, the welcome email architecture will naturally change if you have more chances to sort of nurture them
Mhm.
into your world. Um, so everybody should be Jen says, yay, nurturing sequences. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've taken a look. I've got some questions into the Substack team about the deliverability of those. So I'm not like jumping off of Kit yet and like throwing everything into Substack, but there is a really like opportunity in your welcome email and the potentially nurturing sequences to like dig into like the relationship you want to have with your readers there. So just pinning that for folks, um, because it's coming, and how you think about how you nurture folks. Yeah, it's
You know, like that's how you know you're a marketing geek. Like how excited you got about that announcement yesterday when you were boxing me. I was like, oh, Rowan. You're part of
Yeah.
the marketing crew.
Well, there's so much about there's especially for larger publications, if you don't if you don't keep your archive really, really organized, it's overwhelming. It's
Mhm.
just overwhelming, and expecting people to figure out what their next best step is just that's just, like, silly. Like, I
Mhm.
want to help show you how to find your way through 3 years of an archive so that you get the things that you want. And there is a sort of uncovering, and I'm really hopeful that there's cross my fingers that they'll let us put like polls into the emails so that we can actually hear from people and actually see the results of like whether or not our sequences are working. So, but I'm going to stop on that rabbit trail because I'm still waiting to hear from Substack on whether or not people can opt out of those nurturing sequences, like they can opt out of the emails landing in their inbox. So, um, but yeah, so okay, so we've gone through these first impressions. Um, I'm wondering, do you have any other, like, final thoughts before we I think we could take a couple questions from the audience if they have any from folks who have tuned in. It's been really fun to see everybody joining. What do you think what's the takeaway today? Have fun,
Uh,
be
like
specific.
honestly, I think have fun, because even if it's just one funky word or a fun sounding phrase, that is going to be enough to keep them going for the next 5 seconds, the next 10 seconds. Um, but a lot of it is like this is true for all copywriting as well. Like if people feel like it's just some sort of magic art and you need to be really persuasive and it's got to be clever, and it's not like that at all. The bulk of the work is in removing friction, confusion, rejection, like all of the stuff that nobody wants to feel. If you can just be clear and simple and give direction and be a human, you will be so far ahead of most people. Like you will see it yourself. You'll be like shopping around, looking at all the different sites, all the different Substacks, and you can see it yourself, like how I've done it. Like I look at it and think, how this is impenetrable. How would I know where to start or what do I look at? And now I've clicked on 3 things and all of them were behind a paywall, and I still don't really know what it is that you write about. So it's not like I wish it was some sort of clever magical art form that you had to be really talented to do. But marketing and taking people on some kind of journey is mostly just about being clear, simple, removing friction, making sure they feel welcome and not rejected, being a human, and giving a clear sense of direction. And if you don't know what it is that you want them to do next, there's absolutely no way they're going to figure out on their own. Like it starts with you
Yeah.
having a clear idea of, okay, these 3 would be great posts for someone who's brand new to read, and I'm going to put them in front of them. Like just leaving people to figure out on their own is not going to work. Okay, that was my excited little rant.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No, I love that, and it resonates a lot with me. I think there are a lot of people in our community that feel like funnels are very anti-human, like they're
Mm,
very pushy, and I think the middle ground that I'm always trying to strike with folks is that people need a leader. They need you to
mm,
lead them to the next step. And so if I assume the posture of like I know how to lead you to the thing that I want you to see and I want you to know, and I have this thing I really think could help your life, I'm going to lead you in that. And I'm going to
mm,
give you choice along the way. Like, I'm not going to, it's not my style to like pound it into you, but um, striking that balance and just having permission to be like, you're here to lead your readers on in an experience. And that is okay. That's a good thing to do. So yeah, so full permission there. And let me check into the comments, folks. If you have any questions that you want to ask me or Laura, or both of us, I'm going to try and scroll through and see what we've missed in the comments. So Jen says that she learned that she resisted creating a start here post, but this discussion is compelling the need for direction. Yeah.
and
Um,
I think part of that is like sorry to interrupt. Even if you didn't ever publish the Start Here post, creating it, writing it in some kind of draft format will be an excellent experience for yourself, because that is when you get partway through and go, oh, actually, I don't know. If someone was brand new, I don't know what it is. And you said earlier, like you pin sometimes it's the Start Here post, but sometimes it's the things that are inside the Start Here post, and you pin those. That's an amazing level of awareness that you have of this. These are the things I want people to see. So I would say, even if you don't want to put a Start Here post on your homepage,
yep.
write it anyway, because that process will be so informative for figuring out what is the journey that you want people to take.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I think yeah, I
Oh,
think that'd be
hi, Kate. I just got to like, I don't recognize many of the names, but I recognize Kate there.
Oh, Kate says she loves the mashup of us. How fun is that? We're a mashup. I've never called it a mashup. Well, I'm going to I've been while folks are figuring out if they have any questions, I'm going to tell you that I actually rewrote my welcome email to be a little cheeky. Because I'm not normally cheeky. People don't know that. I don't feel like people don't know that about me, but I am currently testing my welcome email. So if you aren't subscribed to the publishing spectrum, you're going to get the brand new welcome email that I'm testing out. But I decided to go. So I go in between trying to inspire people that there's a different way, and I usually hang out in that space that like we're anti-formula, like we're very permission based, and very um, like discover for yourself using best practices what's best for you. But I decided to change like the seat from where I was writing, and I hope this is helpful to folks. I really do want to hear from y'all what your questions are. But I decided to change it to like I think my subject line is if I had a guest, you and I have something in common. Um, and then basically lead into if you've made it this far, like assuming that you've learned something about me, if you made it this far, I have a hunch that I know a few things about you. And I personally enjoy someone saying they know something about me because I want to I instinctively
Sure,
want to
they're
prove
on
them
it.
wrong. And then if I'm right, then I'm intrigued, then I'm hooked. And so my welcome email is kind of playing with this idea that like there are more people out there who want to publish online and publish your newsletter in a way that is more embodied and more like supportive of your intuition rather than like formulas to put you into a box. So I'm playing with that right now. So just giving y'all permission to play and be cheeky because in my one-on-one calls, I'm a publishing strategist and coach. A lot of what we're trying to unearth is like, what's your voice like? What does it actually like sound like? And so I'm giving myself permission to put a little bit of voice in there right now. So
I
this is
love it.
this is
And
fun.
that's a good place to do it as well, because you can, when something's, the concept that you're trying to explain is simple. It's like a welcome sequence. You're not really trying to teach anyone anything. It's not difficult. It's like, hi, you're here. Remember, you signed up for this newsletter. Because you're not trying to impart information, you can really ramp up the amount of personality you've got it. Like if you were writing instructions on how to build a house or something, like something that's really difficult, that's going to have to be plain boring. Like there's no
Yeah.
personality in this. It's like
Yeah.
I want my furniture construction instructions to be very dull and very
Yeah.
clear. But
Yes.
if someone
Yes.
was writing like instructions on how to make toast using a toaster, I would very much enjoy if they filled it with personality and made it ridiculous, because that's quite a boring thing to read because I could easily understand it. So that's how like I try and people ask like how much personality can you put into things, or like when is the right time to do it.
Yeah.
Something that is low stakes, you're not really trying to impart information that's difficult to understand. Like absolutely go for it, and it doesn't then that tone like that stays with people. So if you later have to explain something that's a bit more complicated and you have to tone it down and there's not so much personality in it,
Yep.
they don't forget that that's who you are. Like that perception that you gave them in the welcome sequence of this fun, playful, slightly cheeky person comes across while they're reading this other content, even though it's slightly toned down version of your voice.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I see we've got a question from Vicky. And she's asking, should the welcome email be short or long, or does the length not matter? I'm gonna give that to you, Laura.
Uh, I prefer short. Because it's one of the first interactions you're going to have with someone. I actually also really love to have welcome emails that try and provoke a response. So when you're saying about your welcome email, I don't know if you've got a question in there, but this idea that you're like tapping them, going, "I bet I know something about you," it kind of almost invokes a response anyway, because they're like, "Oh yeah, that bit was true," or like, "I completely see myself in that." I like a short welcome sequence that gets people to reply, because that will strengthen the connection. And also, I love the replies. Like, I want to know who these people are that have signed up to hear from me. Like, it's really interesting. Um, the other reason why I like it to be short is basically we feel good. So if you give them a really long email, so they see your name, your newsletter, it arrives, then they have to read this email and they're like, "I've started reading, I'm committed, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going." If they have to bail out partway through because it's too long, then they'll feel that as like a sense of failure because they started to read it and then they gave up. Or they might just look at it and just go, "Absolutely not, like that's far too long, I'm not going to read it."
Oh,
And so
yeah.
now you've got this kind of connection in their brain of, I saw your name in my inbox, I opened it up, I didn't finish reading the thing you sent me. And however tiny that is in terms of like the many other interactions they might have with you in the future, because it's so early on in their relationship with you, that sticks. And then it makes it less likely that they're going to open the next email because they're anticipating this is going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, especially for the first one, I think once you get past 1 and 2, like some of my emails, my regular emails that go out are huge.
Yeah.
I look at
Yeah.
them and I'm like, wow, I've really gone to town on that one, but I've written it now and I'm proud of it. So it's
Yeah.
going.
It's going. Yeah. Yeah.
As long as I mix it up, people don't feel like, oh, every time they see my name, like this is going to be a slog to get through this.
Yeah. We definitely don't want it to be a slog. I feel like, I'm trying to I'm challenging in my head. So like whenever I'm like, yeah, absolutely sure. Like is there ever a instance where really, really long would make sense? And I think only if it's like you've promised something and like on like a page, like when like my welcome email will get you access to this exclusive research. I think there you can probably wiggle away from it because you've set an expectation of something valuable that is also long. But yeah, I would say like short and sweet. Like we're not even on the first date yet.
Even if you're trying to deliver something like that, I don't know how easy this is to do in Substack, but it is better to have a shorter email and then a link where they can access the resource somewhere else because again, they get the um like they get the dopamine, like, oh, there's a link and I clicked on it, like, yay me, I've done a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they open it and then they can read the thing, like you're trying, so they feel like they've accomplished something. I know it sounds like we're talking about our readers like toddlers, but this is not within their awareness that they're behaving like this. It's just like how our brain is wired. So yeah, if you do have like a lot of information to impart, it is better for the reader experience if it's a short email and then they choose, yes, I would like that information that you promised to deliver me. I am now saying yes, I'm ready for it, and they click on the link and then they access it.
Yeah, I like the idea of giving people, and again, I think somebody asked about either about pages or welcome emails or both on like the data. We do not have data. I have been a thorn in Substack side about this because I don't have data on what anybody's clicking on my about page. I don't have data on if they're clicking anything in our welcome emails. The one way you could get around that is if you made your own URLs. It basically tracked the clicks that are embedded on your homepage. But you can't you can't figure out if you can see if they've clicked out into something. Again, I guess you could link to your subscribe page. You could go to like I used to use Google URL shortener. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what it was called or
Or
something.
like, yeah,
Yeah. Um, but no, Substack does not have it native in there, and I've been bugging them for a little while about that.
yeah, because that's pretty
Yeah.
cool information to have. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm mindful of the time. I haven't seen any more questions come in. I hope that was helpful. Oh, Jen says she's used Bitly. Yes, that's what I've used. I've used Bitly. I want to share some links really quick so that folks know how to find you, Laura. Um, she's got, like I said at the beginning, I've used a handful of your resources. I've loved them a lot. And I also want to give a quick shout out to Jane Pike because she is actually the person who told me about your work and I just jived with it right away and found everything that you shared to be um, just easy for me to filter through in thinking about how I want to differentiate my publication because there are very standard marketing spaces inside Substack where it's important to think like a marketer. Um, so everybody go and find Laura. Laura right now also has a Substack, but she is in a free range writing season. And we love those because you never know what you're going to uncover. And so, yes, you could also follow her or read her.
It is where like the stories that will not die, that's where they go. Like when it's just like goes through your head and you're like, I need to write, like I have to, this just has to come out now. So then I'll sit down and write it down. It's not very often at all. But it's yeah, such like a freeing experience to get it out of. Otherwise the words just run around in my head forever. And I'm like, yes, I can hear that you're there. Let me just put them down and put them over there and someone else can deal with them and then I can get on with my life.
Yes. Yes. Well, more power to you because that's how I started. I was like, I have to get the things I want to say for the first time. I finally wanted to get them out. And so Substack was a great place to do that. So lots of uh, happy frolicking. That's what I'll say. Happy frolicking in your free range writing season. because it is really fun. One thing I did want to mention before we go is that if this was helpful to you today, I am and talking through your first impressions, I'm going to be hosting a pop-up Voxer session for my founding subscribers where you can come and ask me questions about your first impressions. And if you're not familiar with Voxer, it's basically a you can use walkie-talkie or you can type like your questions in there. And so it'll be a group thing. You'll get a link in your inbox the day before so you can join. And it's very asynchronous. It's a come and go sort of experience, but I will be available to talk through your questions. If you decide to tinker with your bio or your publication description, I'm happy to give you all feedback on what you're working on. But either way, I just thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Thanks for joining me, Laura, and for being part of this really different season of my life. You've helped me a ton, and I'm glad that I could introduce you to the publishing spectrum.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to geek out about marketing stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here.
awesome. Okay, well, thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Um, yeah, we'll see you around. We'll see you on Substack. Bye.